Growth rarely happens in a straight line. It comes through new opportunities, unexpected challenges, meaningful relationships, and the lessons we learn along the way. Grow with Granite shares real conversations about personal, professional, and business growth, offering practical insight, honest experiences, and encouragement to help inspire your next step. Because wherever you are on your journey, there is always room to grow.
Thanks for tuning in to the Grow with Granite podcast. We appreciate you joining us for our second episode. In this first three-part series, we're talking about the intangible things that young professionals need to think about when they're evaluating job opportunities and ultimately the companies they'll go to work for. We've evaluated these considerations through a lens similar to that outlined in Trey Taylor's book, A CEO Only Does Three Things. Taylor lays out three pillars of focus: culture, people, and numbers. We established in our last episode that much like senior executives, young professionals are required to make many significant decisions the first few years out of college, almost always with only a portion of the information they wish they had. We kicked things off last time by talking about culture. As Taylor puts it, culture trumps everything. The next most significant lens to evaluate opportunities through revolves around people. Today we're going to talk through four things you need to consider when evaluating the people you might go to work with as a young professional. Let's dive in. So here's a fun fact. As a working adult, you're likely to spend more waking hours with the people you work with than your own family. Think about that. That's why what we're talking about today is so important. And I want to give credit to our 4 interns at Granite this summer. Logan, Jake, Andrew, and Evan have all been great about collaborating with me on this project to help assure that we're focusing on the right things, the things that matter to them and other people like them in similar circumstances who are young professionals transitioning into the work world. They're all rising seniors and are exploring career opportunities right now, and they're deep in the throes of that. And that's important to note, by the way. Especially in the insurance industry, young talent is highly sought after. Top candidates can and should be choosy about where they land out of school. It's important to note that upwards of 90% of college seniors enrolled in a dedicated university risk management or insurance program will have their job offers locked in 6 months prior to graduation. The early bird gets the worm here. Don't delay. The most attractive spots are filled intentionally and they're filled early. For the purposes of this conversation, let's start by talking big picture and then dive into some of the nuances. The first thing that we're really going to stop on today is what's important to you. As you're preparing to go to a career fair or to interview for a particular position, where do you start when you're thinking about what's important to you? And so in this first section, I'm going to give you several points to think about as you're evaluating that for yourself. And here are some good places to start. Is this organization opportunity rich? Are there places I can grow? Is there an absence of limitations here? Is this an organization who has grown and hired other people recently? Or is this the first time this organization has hired anybody in the last 5 years? It's probably going to give you an indicator of whether an organization is opportunity rich for people or not. The second thing is this organization long-term focused? And a lot of these are going to be things you're evaluating from a you as the person perspective, but you're evaluating them in the organization you're interviewing with. Is this organization long-term focused? And you'll see that there's usually an undercurrent in really successful businesses that achieve and stay really relevant for the long term. They're usually going to have this undercurrent of delayed gratification. That's going to be a part of their culture. We all know the time value of money and the importance of that, and that shows up culturally also. And so when people are working over a period of time towards big goals, and that's embraced as a part of an organization's culture, it's really evident, and you've got to decide if that's something that's really important for you. And then what's in it for me? Am I going to be prepared to advance here? How am I going to be poured into? Are there mentorship programs where I'm going to have the opportunity to participate and interact with people that have some more experience and more of a big brother, big sister kind of approach? Am I going to be poured into from a professional and personal development perspective and have access to designation training and stuff like that? Is there leadership training offered or in place? And maybe that's not something that you're going to be eligible for right out of the gate as a young professional, but as long as you know that's happening now in other parts of the company, it's a really good indicator that eventually you're going to qualify for to participate in things like that also. And so knowing that it's active now and not just a wish and a promise is going to be really important and tell you something about the organization. And then, when you're thinking about different roles within an organization and different atmospheres, people now are remote, they're hybrid, some are in person and traditional, which I obviously think is best based on my comments in the last episode. But when you're thinking about remote and hybrid positions, especially here, some organizations are better at doing things remote than others. And so when you're thinking about mentorship programs, professional and personal development, leadership training, those are areas you really need to focus in on and probably ask some more questions about how those are delivered and how well a company does that in a remote capacity, because everybody doesn't do it equally and some are much better than others. And then let the evidence speak for itself. And we're going to talk a lot about that. It's so easy to get emotionally caught up in this process. Maybe you've never interviewed for jobs before. You kind of get this emotional draw to one organization or another, and that can be super important. I don't want to write that off entirely. But also, if you know an organization's not going to be a great fit or there's a alignment issue in some way, take the evidence for what it is. Watch the people who are already working with the firm that you're thinking about joining. What are the realities of those people in similar roles? Have they grown with the firm? And is long-term success evident in those individuals who have grown with the company over time? Would you be happy achieving the level of success that maybe some others that you would consider in your peer group or others who have gone before you, maybe they're 3, 5, 7 years ahead of you in the organization? Would you be happy with that type of career trajectory? Maybe you feel like you're going to be more confident in those roles and be more successful based on the evidence that you have and what you know about the career tracks and everything. Are you going to be more successful? And does that give you more confidence or less confidence? But don't make excuses here. And here's a sage outlook for you. The best indicator of future results are past results. Let the results of your research do the talking. The next consideration is less of a question. It's a truth you need to acquaint yourself with. And so, the people around you early on in your career will absolutely shape your trajectory, professionally speaking. And that's something you really just got to come to terms with. These folks and the outlooks and experiences they share will help you establish your own expectations and norms. The significance of this influence cannot be overstated. Do you want to build on a solid foundation or shifting sand? The people to your left and right early in your career will have an impact on your outcomes for better or worse. Be intentional about associating with the right people. Associate with the people who know something about where you want to go and can help get you there. There really are no neutrals. Are the people you're surrounded with willing to mentor you and provide honest, transparent feedback or not? And by the way, honest, transparent feedback isn't always comfortable or even pleasant for that matter, but you cannot grow without it. It's absolutely imperative to have a hunger for good, solid feedback, even if that's critical sometimes if you want to be very successful. And then look for formal or informal mentorship relationships, maybe even outside the formal mentorship programs that we talked about just a minute ago. How are more experienced team members pouring into junior teammates within an organization? It's something for you to kind of be able to figure out as you're evaluating any type of company is, are the people who have gone before you willing and able to pour into the folks like you who are coming in as a young professional? Third thing we're going to talk about is how does this organization invest in its team members? And, are the people at this firm you're considering being proactively invested in? And how can you tell that? One of the first areas that you're going to look at is, how's the team morale? Do people like being around each other? Do they do life together? Do people have friends within the organization? You can pick up on a lot of this through social media and what you hear and see about, a company's outlook from an employment perspective. And are employees even called employees, or are they called something else? I feel like employee is kind of a neutral term. There's employees, there's employers, but sometimes you can pick up on things like the use of I or we in certain communications, especially from leadership and the people who are running the interview process, to know, is this organization more self-centered? Is there a very strict hierarchy, or is it more collaborative and more of a team-based approach? And so that's good information for you to know when you're making these evaluations. The other thing is, I would really encourage you to look at kind of a macro evaluation of the company. When you're thinking about how does this company invest in me as a young professional, everybody's going to put on their best face during the interview process, because I talked about the fact that these positions are very competitive and they want you as a really solid candidate. And so they're going to tell you all of the good things that they can. They're not going to come tell you maybe the not so fun things about their organization. And so when you're looking at their website, when you're looking at social media, when you're online doing your other research or collaborating with other people and networking, does the walk match the talk for this organization? That's a really important consideration. And then, are there established career paths? Is it we talked about the importance of a collaborative work environment. What does the employee benefit program look like? There's a lot of indicators you can get out of that when you're trying to figure out, how does this company invest in its team? How is continuing education and professional development handled? Is that all covered from a cost perspective, or is there an expectation that you as an employee are going to front the expense for that, and if you pass, you're reimbursed? Two very different outlooks. They're going to tell you something about the level of investment this company is willing to make. And then, back on the topic of, is this organization going to be more self-centric or organization-centric? That's important to know, because if an organization is protected by its leadership team and they're constantly focused on what's best for the organization, that's going to lead to a really healthy culture and also probably outsized success for that company over the long term. But that requires organizational leadership to make decisions that aren't always best for what's them in their chair, or for a particular job or department sometimes. And so making sure that the decisions made by upper leadership in a company are actually what's best for the company, and that things aren't made in kind of a short-term way to save face or something like that. So those are all short indicators or good ways for you to think about and look into how an organization invests in its team members. And finally, we're going to talk about the fourth section, and this is other people elements. This is kind of a catch-all section. Some good rules of thumb here for you to evaluate as you're thinking about the organizations you're interested in, the people that are in them as leaders and coworkers. And the first thing that I would really encourage you to look at here as far as other considerations is value alignment. Is this organization, do they stand for the things that I stand for? Is there good alignment with the people who work there? Am I going to be able to build my community within this organization? And, ultimately you've got to ask the question for yourself, where do you want to make your mark and with whom do you want to make it? And do these people line up with those expectations I've set for myself? The second thing you might consider is there a lot of job hopping in and out of an organization? Do the people hop around? Is this a stepping stone? Probably not good for longevity and long-term success, so just something you need to keep an eye out there on. Are there too many chiefs? If there's too many cooks in the kitchen, that's a really good thing for you to understand, because that can lead to a compartmentalized or a fractured culture. There might be more bureaucracy and red tape than is necessary. And so while there needs to be great supervision and leadership within an organization, that doesn't mean that it needs to be really cliquey like a high school cafeteria. And so making sure that you're evaluating that for yourself, and that you're aligning with an organization that is appropriately led and doesn't have too much fractionalization is going to be really important. And then finally, when it comes to these other elements, is networking opportunities. And this is really important on two different fronts, both inside the industry and outside the industry. And inside the industry, this is an enormous, we're speaking about the insurance industry, of course, right now, but this could apply to many other industries, in that it's an enormous industry, but it's a pretty small world when you get right down to it. A lot of the people you're going to school with, especially if you're in one of these risk management insurance programs, are going to be people that you're working with into perpetuity. And you're going to run into them at conferences and at classes and different programs and expos. And so you need to know that. And also the community-based piece, you're going to, maybe you're relocating for this new role. You need to find a new doctor, a new dentist, who you're going to go to get your oil changed. These are all considerations that we have to keep in our minds, and understand that ultimately at the end of the day, whether it's personal or professional, you knowing where to go to find answers is going to be really important. Nobody expects you to know everything as a young professional, but your ability to recognize where to go to get the answers is going to be crucial for your success, and it's really going to take you into the future on a really solid footing if you get great at that early in your career. To wrap this up, let's agree that it's important to understand what is most important to you, and that you explore alignment between the things that are important to you and the things that are most important to the people you might work with. What evidence is there to support those findings? Secondly, the people you surround yourself with early in your career will have an impact on your long-term outcomes. Curate your peers intentionally. Thirdly, understand how the company you're interested in invests in its team members. And lastly, explore the other people elements of the role that matter to you. If you're going to find out that a role isn't a great fit for you, the interview process is the best place to come to that conclusion for all parties. I hope you found these insights to be helpful as a young professional. Join us next time as we dive into the numbers that should matter to those planning to transition into the professional world. Until then, thanks for growing with Granite.